First of all, thanks to you, the Civic Association. I really appreciate them doing this again. I'm State Senator Fran Millar. I've had the good fortune to be the state senator out here for the last 8 years. In fact, I worked with Tom Rice, and we passed the legislation that gave you the right to become a city. That's why you're all standing in this room tonight. And but I will tell you, I've also worked with various officials at Gwinnett, state schools, with Superintendent Wilbanks. I have worked with, obviously, Charlotte Nash, your commissioners here, the mayor, and I've been endorsed, I guess, by all of them except maybe one. The most important endorsement was probably from Debbie Mason. I will tell you, this is an interesting contrast, this election. It's not about D.C. politics. It's not about presidential tweets. It's about who best will serve the people in Gwinnett, Fulton, and DeKalb County. I've got a record of performance, okay? I've been there. I deal with solutions. I'm a straight shooter, and I very much appreciate you all being here tonight. We look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I am Sally Harrell, and I am the Democratic nominee for State Senate District 40. I am not new to politics. I actually served in the Georgia House of Representatives from 1999 to 2005. So Senator Millar and I actually spent 6 years in the House together. We started as freshman legislators together. I left politics after 6 years to raise my 2 young children. Senator Millar is actually in my baby videos.
Don't go there, that's not you. It's not me too, just for the
Those babies are now 17 and 18 years old, so I'm almost done. Actually, I'm working hard to try to get them off to college. I've lived in DeKalb County for 30 years. I live with my husband and my 2 children. I live in unincorporated DeKalb County, so I'm interested in learning from you what the cityhood process has been like. I have a bachelor's degree from Georgia State University and a Master of Social Work from the University of Georgia. I have experience in nonprofit management as well as child welfare policy and mental health policy. And I also served on the Georgia budget policy. Thank you very much for having me here tonight.
Are you in favor of allowing the state to set start and end dates for school, or do you think it should be left up to the local district?
The question is about start and end dates for school. I guess this has been an issue because the school start date has creeped up earlier and earlier so that we're going to school the first week of August. There's also the issue of balanced calendars. There's a strong lobby at the Capitol to delay school start until after Labor Day so that the industry, the entertainment industry and all the pools and everything can have good hours. I really think that's a local decision because things are so different from the rural areas to the urban areas that I really do think that's a local school board decision.
We've debated this issue for the last 20 years, I think. And obviously has an effect on tourism. But we also have another factor that's come into play that we're all cognizant of now. Your air conditioning.
Up a little louder. Up a little louder, sir.
Yeah, that's better. Yeah, just closer.
Can I start this?
Yeah, for sure.
I said this particular issue has been debated for about 20 years. And as well as the tourism industry on the coast, which would like to see later start dates, we also have the factor of these kids at schools at the end of July, beginning of August, about the utility costs. And it's right, wrong, or indifferent. That's one of the things to be considered. There's actually a study committee on this subject right now. We're going to get a recommendation from them. Quite frankly, can't tell you how I would vote at this point. I would like to see a lot of states have done this. They said, okay, let's have a starting date, but they don't determine an ending date, and they don't determine the rest of the calendar. That may be something we follow. I'm just not sure how it's going to play out at this point. Thank you.
44 million people in this U.S. are struggling to repay student loans with an average debt load of $35,000 apiece. Is this the next financial crisis?
That is a great question, and my answer is this. For the first time in this state, as most of you know, we have the Hope Scholarship. It is a merit-based scholarship. I passed legislation this past year, a framework in order to give needs-based aid for lower-income students in order to get scholarships in this state. There's a requirement that will be probably in that bill. It's going to require that the young person either do volunteerism or work, because I don't believe in handouts, whether they have to work 10 hours a week or not, but they need to participate in it. This is going to be a great program. If we put $40 million into the program, which I think we can, because we can now tax Amazon sales. If you just heard, we're supposed to get $200 million for that. If we do this, we can provide 25,000 more credentials in this state, and we can fill the job that we brought here and why we're #1 in doing business. Thank you.
I'm getting ready to send kids to college now. I have read that scholarship, that needs-based scholarship, is just $1,500. I recently went with my children to the bookstore to buy their books for the dual enrollment program, and 3 books came to $1,000. I kid you not. So I don't think $1,500 is going to go very far. This is a very serious problem that we need to take a harder look at.
Will you fight for state subsidies so that school teachers can purchase guns and bulletproof vests at a discount?
Okay. I'm going to answer this as a mother. It does not make me feel safe to have more guns in schools and or on our university campuses. Let me be clear. If teachers have guns in schools, accidents will happen. Those guns will not necessarily stay in their hands. They will get in other people's hands. Not only that, but I don't think most of our teachers want to carry guns. They want to teach their students.
Well, that one's easy for me. I was the one Republican senator 3 years ago that opposed guns on college campuses. Coach Sally and I have the Distinction Award for Moms Demand Action Against Guns, primarily because of that. Look, I'm serving on School Safety Study Committee right now. In fact, we have a meeting, here's a commercial. It's Chamblee High School tomorrow, 10 o'clock if you can be there. Look, I don't believe we want armed teachers. What we need to do is put resource officers in our schools that are trained, okay, and arm those resource officers. Thank you.
Should non-citizens and illegal aliens be granted Georgia driver's license?
No, I would have to say no on that. I think you can have people who come in this country with visa permits that have the opportunity to do that. But I think voting is a privilege. It's, you know, the Constitution talks about things for U.S. citizens. And now, along those lines, I will say this. I am disappointed that we have not done much in the way of immigration reform. I think we've got, if it's 12 million people, whatever it is here, we're not sending them anywhere. They're going to be here. We need to figure out a way to make this work. And we talked about the DACA kids earlier. They've been in my office because I chair higher education. I sympathize with them. And absolutely, we need to educate these people because, folks, the philosophy is we've got all these people coming here with all these companies. We can't fill the jobs. So let's get our best and brightest. And let's get a lot of these kids also into our technical colleges. I've made a real push on career readiness. The first bill. It included dual enrollment so kids can take technical college classes and college classes while in high school. In fact, Sally told me her kids are doing that now, I believe. It's a great program. We put $60 million in it next year. So let's try and find ways to work with these people. Thank you.
This question was driver's licenses. How many of you have been hit by an uninsured motorist? Okay. So when people are working jobs and contributing to our communities, they need a driver's license so that they can buy insurance so that we can all drive on the same roads safely. Thank you.
What is your top goal for education in Georgia?
Education is a subject that's near and dear to my heart. In fact, it's probably the #1 reason why I decided to run for this seat. We have failed to fund public education adequately for an entire generation of children.
Thank you.
Over the last 10 years, there have been $9.2 billion worth of cuts. Now, some of that is understandable because we had the Great Recession of 2008, but we were entirely, this legislature was entirely too slow to respond to a vibrant economy to start putting that money back into our schools. And now they've finally done it in the year of an election.
Wonder why?
I wonder why too. I do. So until we adequately fund our public education, we are going to continue to have problems, and I hear time after time people telling stories about why they've had to pull their kids out of public schools, and they're pulling money out of their pockets and their retirement system to pay for private schools. Thanks.
I've been involved with education for the last 20 years. I was one of the ones that campaigned for full-day pre-K, for example. I also worked in various sundry programs to help young people. We did all the autism bills so these kids can learn how to read, okay? We're now working on dyslexia study committee to help children. I promise you, money is not just the answer. We did fully fund education. Scott's right down there. But if money was the answer, the city of Atlanta schools would be the Harvard of the South. Okay? It's how you use your resources, okay? And you have to remember, all these things we want to do this and expand that, you've got to balance the budget. That's the one thing we're required to do at the Georgia General Assembly. Thanks.
We know that District 40 covers a number of districts, a number of areas.
Yeah.
What are your priorities for the people in this room, in Gwinnett County and Peachtree Corners?
Well, I think the main thing, number one, I support the regional transit plan. I think that's necessary. I'm glad that it's going to be on the ballot, because I've always believed in people's right to vote. That's why you all have the opportunity to vote on cityhood out here. I think that's probably it. I also think you need to look at some tax relief to people. I think that's important. We've done it to some of the other counties, whereby we basically frozen the value of people's homes as respects to their city and county taxes. Of course, you have no millage here, so the city is not an issue right now here, but certainly with the county. And you know, you don't want people losing their homes because their property taxes have gone out of sight. I've watched that. I'm living in DeKalb. I represent that's probably 75% of the district we're talking about from the standpoint of voters. And I've seen people that can be priced out of their homes, and that's not right. So I think in those areas, and I also think we talk about school safety, this kind of thing, but we need to do more things for the less fortunate. That's why I'm involved with this dyslexia. That's why I'm been involved with the autism. With PK Martin, we did coverage for kids that couldn't afford hearing aids to get them. How do you learn when you can't hear? So I think a lot of these family issues, because we don't have another recession, we have, you know, a unemployment trust fund, and I made sure there's $2.5 billion in it for the next recession. So I think those kind of things can affect everybody out there. Thank you.
I've held quite a number of meet and greets throughout the community of Peachtree Corners, and it's a very educated community. And I think that by far the number one issue that I've heard about is people do want good schools. And that's across the board. People who have kids want good schools, and people who own homes know that their home values are dependent on those schools being good. And I think you had it actually a little bit backwards, Mr. Reeves. Good schools bring in business. You need the infrastructure of good schools, transportation, and healthcare to bring in those businesses. It works in that order, not businesses taking care of our schools take care of our businesses.
Obviously, there's no possible way to ask all these questions, but I think what we are going to do is allow the candidates to ask each other a question.
Those of you who are still standing back there, it's much better to be back there standing than it is here right now for this part of the meeting. Senator Millar, earlier this year, the legislature revised the charter for Peachtree Corners. When residents raised concerns that the change was contrary to the City Light vision, I'm told that you told them that it was a done deal. Is this representative of how you work to address your constituents' concerns?
That was a meeting of UPCCA, and we found out about a couple of years after the fact that we have a constitutional problem with the way that the law was drafted. And we were required to change the law and make sure that you cannot say you can only list just 3 services. You have to say that you provide all of them. Now, you don't have to do that. You can job them out. We didn't have a choice from a constitutional standpoint. That opinion was registered by legislative council. Okay, it was registered by another attorney. What we did, we went back. Scott, I believe you carried that bill. I passed it in the Senate, and we fixed the problem. Now, here's the deal. If someone wants to raise your taxes and they're on your city council, or they want to do something you don't like, you have the opportunity to then vote them out. So I didn't ever tell anybody that particular comment.
All right, Senator, you have the opportunity to ask Harrell question.
Okay, I have championed trying to get the state income tax reduced for a number of years. This year, the Republican majority did it. In the next 2 years, we're going to return $5 billion to the citizens of Georgia, the individuals. The gubernatorial candidate for the Democratic Party says she wants to repeal that income tax cut. And I believe you actually tweeted on one of your accounts, retweeted on one of your accounts, that tax cuts were scams. So my question is just a simple yes or no. If you happen to become the next senator for this district, will you vote to repeal the income tax cut for $5 billion?
I believe that income tax cut was because of a windfall that we were going to receive from the federal government because of the federal income tax cut. I've mentioned already that the public education budget over the last 10 years has been cut by $9.2 billion. What that translates as is that we have a lot of making up to do. We have a football field in the back of my kid's high school that has been banned from use because there are literally holes in the ground because the school hasn't had enough maintenance money to keep up with it. Our children have been riding on school buses standing in the aisles because there are not enough seats, because there's not enough money for transportation. I can see that it would make sense to make a big tax cut once we have filled those holes in our public education system.
I'd like to continue part of the topic that Rod brought up. I think my whole career has been involved with bipartisanship. There's a reason this particular election. I've been endorsed by the former Democratic CEO of DeKalb County, Leon Levitin. Okay? A direct endorsement, direct quote. I've got a quote for about bipartisan support, okay, from Mike Thurman, because we did tax relief and infrastructure improvements together. Together, he and I got the legislation to the General Assembly. I mentioned earlier that I've been endorsed by all of your elected officials except one council person. And I think there's a reason for that. My whole career, I can remember I got an award early on from the NAACP. Now, how many Republicans got one of those awards? For my role to change the Georgia flag. Okay? I've done things that involve bipartisan issues. Yeah, I took a stand on campus carry. It was easy for me. I thought the bill was stupid. I still think it's stupid. But I stood up because I stand up for what I believe. And look, the bottom line is this. Yeah, I've got a bunch of awards, the physical therapy people, the Georgia Chamber of Commerce, and XYZ. But here's the thing that matters. Can you get things done? Can you solve problems? Can you get solutions and get past the sound bites? Now, nobody can dispute. When Governor Deal's got over 60% favorability rating with Democrats and Republicans together, because we did cut the state income tax. We did fully fund education. President Obama lauded him for our criminal justice reform. He just met with Donald Trump up in the White House going through that particular program. We did a mass transit bill, a regional transit. Go ATL, and Martin could possibly become a governor because you're given the opportunity to vote. So look, not past the sound bites, not past the slogans, effusive promises that aren't going to happen. I'm not going to mislead people. Because some of this stuff isn't going to happen and everything can't be free. It has been my honor to serve your interest for the last 8 years. I hope it can continue. Thank you very, very much.
Harrell, 2 minutes.
Let me say first that I personally heard on the Decatur's podcast, Mr. Michael Thurman himself, CEO of DeKalb County, say he did not endorse Senator Fran Millar. We are polarized. We were also polarized the last 2 years I spent in the state legislature when we were moving from Democratic control of the majority to Republican control. I found it helpful during that time to focus on what my own values were. I brought with me tonight this yellow card. I wrote it during my last term in the legislature, and it sat on my desk and it guided me. It says, these are my core Democratic values. These values are the same values that guide me today. And I'm going to share with you what those values are. And the first one is that there is a positive role for government. And that role is to ensure that an economy that's based on maximizing profits does not trample basic human needs. Folks, we have people dying now because they have been left out of our healthcare system. We need to elect people who have the political will to fix this. Secondly, my second goal is that everyone who lives in a civilized society, no matter their economic status, should be treated fairly and equitably. Our statewide public education system is not equitable. And as I've said before, during the last 10 years, we've cut billions of dollars out of the education system. I find it disingenuous that my opponents finally, in an election year, did not cut the education budget and calls it fully funded, and then goes on to call himself the education senator. Every child should have access to a safe and quality public education. Finally, we need to concentrate more on the greater good. Like Eisenhower developed our interstate highway system, we need public transportation. I commit to you that I will follow these values, and I ask you to think about your values when you go to the poll and vote on November 6th. Thank you.